Banquet in the Devil's Realm. A Feast of Selection by Joseph Okocha. I found myself walking inside a bush without remembering how I got there. At first I did not question it. It was late afternoon, the sun was slipping away, the light thinning across the land, though not yet night. Everything felt uncertain, like the day itself was losing its grip on reality. I had been in bushes like this before, searching for giant African land snails with a torchlight. But this was not one of those nights, and this was not a place I remembered entering. The deeper I moved, the more the ground shifted. Forest soil gave way to something softer, pale, warm, unnaturally smooth, like beach sand. I stopped, looked around. Coconut trees swayed in a wind I could not place. Then I heard it, drumming, faint at first, then clearer, intentional. I followed. The vegetation thinned until the forest opened into a wide coastal clearing. A feast, a gathering under open sky. Their clothing was raffia, animal skins, layered coverings that felt ancient. Men, women, children, arranged in strict order. Those closest to the king sat adorned in the finer skins and woven cloths, their faces painted with markings of privilege. Farther back, the clothing grew rougher, the bodies more weary, the silence heavier. Even the children seemed to know their place, sitting in clusters that mirrored the invisible boundaries of their parents. At the center sat the king. Beside him, his son. Not equal, not separate, an extension of the same authority. Apart from their layered ceremonial robes, both wore headgear with two horn-like protrusions rising upward, symbols of power that made them appear less human, more like extensions of the system itself. The horns caught the fading light, casting long shadows across the sand. They spoke among themselves, voices rising and falling like waves. But I could not understand a single word. Their language was gibberish to me, sounds that carried meaning for them, but none for me. It was not the gibberish of nonsense, but of exclusion. Every syllable reminded me that I was an outsider, trapped in a court whose laws I could not read. So I watched instead. I read their silences, their pauses, their eyes. Because in this place, words were not for me. Only gestures mattered. And when the king raised his hand, slow and deliberate, I understood without language. Come. And as that gesture settled into the air, something shifted in the gathering. Bodies paused mid-movement. Conversations lost their ease. Eyes turned, not just toward me, but toward the space I was about to enter. The way they looked at me carried more than curiosity. Some eyes were sharp, almost like daggers. Others were heavy with envy, the kind born from centuries of knowing that certain places were never meant for you. I was being pulled into a space that disrupted their order, and they resented it. Their silence was not empty. It was judgment. It was resistance. I hesitated, but hunger moved faster than thought, so I walked forward. Food was placed before me, meat, fruits, drink. I ate, and I was watched, especially by the king's son, a fiendish smile on his face. Not studying my actions, studying my reactions. Night fell, the drumming softened, stopped. A man was dragged into the center, bound to a wooden pole. He shouted, his voice breaking against the air. He struggled, his body twisting against the ropes. His protest was loud, desperate, human. But no one responded. The crowd did not move. Their silence was heavier than his cries. It was as if his words had already been erased before they were spoken. On his face was something heavier than fear. Understanding. He knew the system had already decided. His protest was not evidence of innocence. It was only another step in the ritual. The execution was not chaotic. It was structured. A spear pierced him. The sound was final. The crowd did not react as if something ended. They reacted as if something continued. The feast resumed. The drumming returned. And I understood. This was not celebration. It was a cycle. Something was being fed here. The king's son leaned toward his father, whispering, pointing, at me, not as accusation, but as conclusion. My silence had already been recorded, my discomfort already classified. In this place, reaction was not private, it was evidence. Movement began around me, slow, certain, inevitable. The air itself seemed to tighten, pressing against my chest. Eyes fixed on me, not with anger, but with the cold precision of a system that had already reached its verdict. I stood. Words spilled out of me, broken, desperate. I do not even remember their shape, only the refusal in my voice, the raw protest of a man who suddenly realizes he has no place to stand. And then the thought struck me like a blade. Was I fed briefly to be fattened for sacrifice? Was the feast itself a preparation for this moment? Or was it my reaction, my disapproval when the man was speared, that betrayed me? I could not tell. In this place, guilt was not declared, it was interpreted. Every silence, every hesitation, every flicker of discomfort was already evidence. The logic was invisible, but it was closing in. My refusal did not matter. The system did not rage. It did not argue. It simply moved. Cold, structural, inevitable. Hands reached for me. And as they did, the world itself began to fracture, as though reality could no longer contain the weight of what was happening. I woke up in my friend's one-room apartment where I was squatting with him. It was the year 2000. The room was warm in that heavy Lagos way. Still air, trapped heat, dust hanging faintly in the light. The ceiling fan had stopped working months ago, so the air carried its own weight, pressing down on everything. My friend had already gone to work. He worked a 9-to-5 job as a junior clerk in an insurance firm, and by this time of day he would usually be preparing to return home. That left me alone in the room, as it often did. I was not gainfully employed, so I survived in fragments of work. Some nights I went into the surrounding bushes with a small torchlight, searching for giant African land snails which I would sell to people who bought them for food. Other times, when opportunity came, I helped local importers in our area, going to nearby warehouses where goods were offloaded from containers and moved into storage. It was heavy work, manual work, the kind that left your body tired but gave you just enough to think about tomorrow. And that was my life then, a cycle of waiting, moving, and surviving in whatever way the day allowed. For a long time I just sat there without moving, trying to understand what I had just come out of. The hunger in my stomach was still there, real, unchanged. No feast, no ceremony, only life. But the banquet had not left me. Its rhythm still pulsed faintly in my chest, as if the drumming had followed me across worlds. I thought of the king's son, of his smile, of the way silence had been turned into evidence. And I wondered if Lagos itself was another banquet, a system feeding on hunger, recording our reactions, selecting us one by one. My friend worked his clerk job, I hunted snails, we carried goods for importers. Each act was survival, but survival itself felt like ritual. The city was a court without walls, a hierarchy without markings, a system that adjusted quietly whenever new bodies appeared. And I was inside it, still inside it. The dream had shown me something I could not ignore, that hunger is never innocent. It does not simply lead to food. It leads into structures, into cycles, into invisible selections. And sometimes what you think is nourishment is only preparation. Sometimes the feast is not for you at all. It is for the system. Slowly the truth settled in. Everything I had just seen was a dream, but not one that felt like a dream. It felt like something that had happened somewhere else, somewhere that still existed without me. And I remembered the old saying, if you dine with the devil, use a long spoon. But even that no longer felt strong enough, because some tables are not meant for dining at all. Some are only meant for selection, and some hunger does not lead you to food. It leads you into systems you may never recognize until it is too late.